at DocuSign, where she builds AI products for lawyers. After graduating from HLS, she began her legal tech career as a legal engineer at Ironclad, a contract management software startup backed by Y Combinator and Sequoia Capital. Jan is a passionate advocate for law students pursuing non-big law careers and regularly coaches lawyers wishing to break into the legal tech industry. And then we have Julian. Julian is a 2-time TEDx speaker who advocates for mental health on social media and runs his own law firm, 4 Creators, 5 Creators, PC, the premier firm focused on representing content creators and social media influencers. Prior to his advocacy work, he worked at Wilson Sonsini as a corporate associate. Please join me in welcome Jen and Julian.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you.
Hey everybody.
So I just want to get started by asking both of you to tell us a bit about yourself and your current job. So what's your career trajectory after HLS, and now what do you do on a daily basis on your current role? Maybe Jen, you can start.
Yeah, sure. So right now I am a product manager at DocuSign, which I'm sure all of you have used at some point. So as a product manager, I come up with strategy for a product area. DocuSign has multiple products, and it's just not e-signature. So the part that I own is contract management software. So I set product strategy, do market research, and work with the design team and the engineering team to actually build a product and help marketing and sales, sell it to our customers. So right after law school, and I think we'll get into, why and how after, I'm sure. But right after law school, I decided to pursue my interest in legal tech. So I joined a startup called Ironclad, which also does contract management software. And I was what they call a legal engineer, but it's more of a solution/implementation engineer. So implementing Ironclad's software to our customers, who are mostly in-house legal teams at big companies. So I'll stop there and pass it to Julian.
Right on. Much less interesting right out of law school. I went to Wilson Sonsini, Bay Area law firm, focusing on technology companies, entrepreneurs. I did general corporate in my time there, so I helped startup companies all the way to public companies and helped companies go public as well through IPO processes and whatnot. And after about 2.5 years during the pandemic, I decided to pivot and leave Biglaw entirely. 2 main things driving that. One was I didn't really see a future I was excited about in the field. I felt like I knew what it would look like when I would wake up 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I had looked around at in-house positions, but honestly, after talking to a lot of people who were corporate counsel, assistant GC, commercial counsel at various tech companies, it just didn't seem super exciting or appealing to me. At the same time, I was kind of going through a mental health crisis of multiple layers, diagnosed with severe anxiety, mild depression, started working through that, and that was taking a lot of energy and resources. So I figured, you know what, I had never taken a gap year before or anything of the sort in my academic or professional career. Why not try something new and leave, this path and see what else is out there for me? Since then, I went viral on social media a couple of times talking about my mental health story. I kind of became a content creator on accident, talking about the law, pop culture in the law, giving out career advice, things of that nature. And first of all, the world of content creation and social media is a wild west, and it's crazy. I don't know if anyone is involved in it, but we can trade war stories. But the legal side of it is completely underdeveloped. And it's something that I saw pretty early on when I started getting brand deals, where creators getting ripped off left and right, intellectual property provisions being stripped away, among many, many other issues. And so I decided to put my legal degree back to work about a year ago and open up my own shop to primarily represent social media influencers and content creators. So these days, my time is mostly focused on my firm, building it out, right, servicing clients, growing it, and a little bit, the remaining time is spent on social media, mental health advocacy, creating content across LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok primarily.
Well, thank you both for sharing. And perhaps both of you have touched upon this a little bit. But I just want to delve more into kind of the thought process of you, pursuing this kind of alternative career options. Because typically, at HLS, I think we would probably generally agree that this EIP process, Biglaw, or clerkship is the kind of the most institutionally, structured way of pushing students in these positions. So I just wonder, when you were deciding what career to pursue, what was the thought process that eventually, made you to be at where you are now? So, for example, I noticed that Julian, you worked at Wilson Sonsini for a few years, and for Jen, you went straight into legal tech right after law school. So, just wonder if you can share some of your personal journey and process you went through in exploring these different career options.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. When I was in law school, I didn't have a strong idea of what I wanted to do post law school. I knew that the legal degree and the education, even at Harvard, was very limited in what you learn by way of practical skills. At the same time, student debt is very real. So I figured, big law is not a bad option. You get great training, you get the prestige, and you can pay off some debt. And that was the driving factor initially. Now, in the mid and longer term, once I got there, I very quickly knew that I wasn't going to stay. I think about a month in at my old firm, Wilson Sonsini, which I will disclaim right here is a great firm, and the people there are wonderful, right? And the work is high quality, right? All of that is true. It's just not an environment where innovative thinkers and people who are trying to really expand accessibility in the legal profession, it's not where those people are living, right? It's more a lot of folks who are content making a really big paycheck and building a really specific skill set for different areas of law. And so there's kind of this question that everyone, I think, in their life will come to in their career. It's like, what is scarier to you? Trying something new and leaving your old path of certainty behind? Or staying where you are and looking back 30 years from now, 40 years from now, and always wondering, what if I had tried something different? And for me, it came to a point a couple of years in that I had had enough, and I wanted to see what else was out there. And thankfully, the thing that Big Law does really well, and we can get into this later, is train you in judgment, in learning how to educate yourself on different areas of the law, learning when to lean on specialists and different lawyers. And so armed with that, I felt like there were a lot of opportunities out there. I'll pass it to Jen.
Yeah, so I originally went to law school wanting to be a general counsel at a tech company one day. So before law school, I worked at Uber, which, as we all know, had a lot of legal issues. And I was in an operations role, but I still got to interact with, our legal team and outside counsel. So I thought that was super cool. And that was a big impetus in me applying to law school. So my 1L summer, I interned at a tech company out in SF as an in-house legal intern. But I think, especially coming from a tech background, I just saw so many inefficiencies in how lawyers worked. It was just a lot of paperwork. I remember it was the end of quarter, so end of like a sales cycle at a company, and all the lawyers were doing were just, redlining sales contracts. And like Julian, I was like, I don't think this is something I can do long term. And then I interned, funnily enough, also at Wilson Sonsini in Palo Alto, which is an amazing firm. But, I saw the big law type of work, and I just kept on thinking, I think I'm still more interested in technology and especially legal tech now that I saw these, inefficiencies and how, technology and innovation can actually accelerate lawyers' work. So that's why I decided to look at, non-Big Law jobs. And the process was definitely difficult because, as Scott said, it's like at HLS, it almost feels like it's EIP or nothing. So it was a lonely process for me to find the job at Ironclad because, OCS had nothing for me. I was literally just Googling legal tech startups, doing cold email, like DMs on LinkedIn, asking people to speak to me. So yeah, it was difficult. And as Julian said, like the financial, risk was there definitely. I graduated with a lot of debt. And when I joined Ironclad, I think I took almost a 40% pay cut. So it was definitely scary for me, but it all worked out. And I'm really glad I made the decision to pursue my actual interest. Yeah, in hindsight, I don't think I regret it at all.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, one thing that I noticed and that I really appreciate is the fact that I think both of you in exploring these options demonstrate this willingness to walk out of your comfort zone and overcome these challenges that you face along the way. So earlier, Jen shared, some of this, practical challenges like looking for jobs in legal tech. And I kind of want to follow up on this issue where Julian. So you worked as a content creator, and now you have your own law firm, primarily working with these influencers outline. So I wonder, what are some of the big challenges that you face when you're, doing what you're doing now? Is it business related, finance related, or some practical considerations?
Yeah, I mean, Jen touched on this when she talked about how not doing the EIP track is a lonely road. Well, when you cast yourself outside of the traditional paths in the legal profession, or really any career, in-house, government, the judiciary, big law, it's lonely. And being a content creator, full-time for a while, and now having, my firm, both of those are entrepreneurial and solo ventures. There's nobody in it with me. There is no roadmap. Content creation already is a wild west, and people still don't understand fully how the mechanics work behind the platforms. And of course they change like this. As you guys know, Instagram Reels showed up out of nowhere to copy TikTok, and it's just been pure chaos, arguably, for the last 5 to 10 years, and that's not going to change. So figuring out a path to paying the bills, that is one of the biggest challenges that I have faced, while also balancing my passion and interest for the law and wanting to advocate and represent people that I care about and who have shared values. It's easy to go out there, in my opinion, as a lawyer and represent companies or rich folk who have money to pay for all sorts of complex transactions. And I have friends in my law school class who have done just that, and they're making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year as solo practitioners doing that type of work. But for me, I see a lot more value in representing content creators and social media influencers for a variety of reasons, the most important of which is that the internet is increasingly becoming the battlefield for free speech everywhere, and that's only going to increase over time. And so for me, content creators are where that issue begins, because they're the ones that are speaking, they're the ones that are starting the conversations that everyone then bickers about in the comment sections, which I won't get into. And so figuring out a way to represent them when they don't make a ton of money, right? To be frank, like the 1% of them do, but I'm not representing Mr. Beast yet. That's been the biggest challenge for me, right? And also figuring out how to balance my own personal life with all of these various projects, because being a solopreneur, you have to push yourself. There's no clock in, clock out. There's no billable hour requirement. It's just, will I pay the bills next month or the month after or not? That's on my plate, and that doesn't go away when I turn off the laptop. So it's been a challenge, when it comes to boundary setting and things of that nature as well. But those are the biggest challenges, I'd say, Scott.
Yeah, I think these are really real challenges that people definitely want to think about when they're, thinking about how they want to pursue their career trajectory. And the next question that I have, which is probably also something that you guys have touched upon earlier, is that it seems that the job that you're currently doing are kind of different from the traditional, like, big law or like law school life. So I just wonder, what are some of the skill sets that you learn at a law firm or law school that you think are transferable and like useful to your current job? And the mirror question to that is, what are some of the skill sets that you think law firm or law school didn't teach you that you have to pick it up by yourself along the way?
Yeah, I can take that first. So I think the biggest takeaway from law school for me was it definitely trained me to learn like on my own, because going into, solutions engineering and product management, it's more technical. So it definitely equipped me to just, approach a new problem, read about it, research it, and then, learn it. And in terms of what law school didn't, and another thing is just being detail oriented. I think it really helped me. But the things, law school definitely didn't teach me, anything about tech. So that I learned on my own at my job. But it wasn't anything that's, daunting after knowing that I had 3 years of law school behind me and the bar exam, which was, I think, one of the hardest things I've ever done. So I think kind of having that confidence really helped me in my tech jobs.
As much as I wish I could say that law school brought me incredibly valuable skills, cannot say that I gleaned a ton from my law school experience, to be totally blunt. But at the firm life, certainly I learned good judgment, which is really, in my current practice, 70 to 80% of what I do is knowing when to push back on a provision, how to negotiate, when to call in a specialist, how to research something when it's out of my scope. There are things, at least as a transactional attorney, that you just don't really get exposure to in law school. You get some of it through HLAP and organizations like it, and for that, round of applause. But the curriculum doesn't focus as much on the transactional side of things, unfortunately. So most of the important skills I learned were in Biglaw, and they had to do with judgment and learning new areas of law.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it might not look apparent on the Zoom camera, but I can attest that a lot of our participants are smiling and nodding. So I think we'll definitely have this shared feelings. So earlier, we talked a bit about like the challenges, some of those, transferable and non-transferable skills, and some of these difficulties. And now I kind of want to pivot to your current role. So I wonder if you guys can share some of the highlights and success stories from your current role. What are something that you're really proud of that you accomplished at your current role?
Yeah, so I joined DocuSign about 7 months ago, so I haven't, shipped a new feature yet, but I am working on something that's a pretty big project that's going to be released to our customers in the fall. So I'm really looking forward to that. But, in general, the biggest kind of joy I get from being a product manager is when I, see customers who are often lawyers actually using, the buttons I make on our website and, getting value. They would often tell me, our legal team now operates way more efficiently because of, the DocuSign software and things like that. Is super meaningful. And then just getting customer feedback and my project getting announced in, the company, like marketing events and things like that. That's super cool. And knowing that I'm helping some of, big like Fortune 100 companies who are clients just operate better and making lawyers jobs less like repetitive so that they can focus on, substantive legal work is super valuable to me.
On the content creation side, it's seeing the response and outpouring of support from folks both in and out of the legal profession in the communities that I'm building, whether it's about mental health or giving out some life advice or career advice. So many comments talking about how this was helpful, thank you. This changed my perspective. I thought Biglaw was the end-all be-all, but after hearing about your stories and experiences, maybe it's not, and I'm okay with that, and I've made peace with that now. Those matter a lot to me because that's the entire reason I began advocating on social media to begin with. It wasn't to be, a quote-unquote influencer and look hot in a Ferrari. That's definitely not my niche. On the law firm side, it's helping the little guys. I have a client who was sued by a business after the client wrote a Yelp review, a literal Yelp review that is 98% opinion. And, I tried to negotiate things down and tell the business owner, look, we'll take down the post. Like, this is like a broke college student who made this post, And this guy is super salty and decides to sue in civil court for defamation for $130,000. And I'm the only thing standing in between her now and in this lawsuit. So we filed an anti-SLAPP motion, which for your guys' benefit is a mechanism that a lot of state legislatures have passed that basically allow a fast track to take down a defamation case that doesn't really have strong grounds. And it's meant to protect freedom of speech, which I know can be a loaded term, but in this context, defamation is very clear, right? It's a statement purporting to be a fact. If I go out there and I say an opinion, that's not defamation, period. And so helping defend folks like that, that's the whole reason I went to law school. And that brings me a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction, even if financially it may not be the most lucrative. It's serving a very important role in society because, of course, as we all know, when we don't protect the little people, moneyed interests and powerful interests perpetually dominate pretty much everything. So being part of that defense has been really exciting to me too.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing. And one common thing that I noticed is that both Jen and Julia, they really take pride in the fact that both of you are able to serve your clients and create value and bring some greater good to our community and society with your current role. So I really, really appreciate it. And so we previously talked about the career fulfillment aspect of our current roles. And I also wonder if both of you can share something about how your current role changes your perspective on personal satisfaction, whether it's just work-life balance or a relationship with family and friends and just the way you work and lead, etc. So how does that change you as a person?
Yeah, I have a great work-life balance. I think I mostly work 9 to 5. It's, big tech, so it's pretty chill. And then just because we talked about, financials before. So at the startup, because it's a startup, I was, obviously not making much. But now that I'm in quote unquote big tech, I think I make a lot more. And I think if you count the benefits and the stocks, it's pretty comparable to Biglaw. So I'm really happy with where I am. And all my, another thing law school gave me was some of my best friends. I think you do trauma bonding when you're there. So we're super close now. But I see them and they work a lot. They're pretty miserable. And even my friends who love their work right now at law firms, they still work a ton. So compared to where my friends are, I would say my work-life balance is much better. I have a lot of hobbies. Yeah, I have a lot of time, so that's good.
That's great.
Yeah, I would echo what Jen said. It's Biglaw is not the worst ever, unless you're at Wachtell. Godspeed, good luck. But or Kirkland. But you just have so much more freedom when you're not in the field. You have so much more control over your own schedule. I was in Hawaii from Friday to Wednesday. I got back yesterday, and I worked from a cafe in Honolulu, and I took a client call at the beach, and I went and filmed content, in my friend's living room. And listen, you can do that in Biglaw too, right? I'm not saying you can't, but there's more barriers that you have to jump over. And, communication is important, right? There might be some weird silent judgment by your teams if you leave. And of course, you're not really in charge of your own schedule in the Biglaw sector, to some degree in mid-law as well. When a client calls, you kind of have to jump on it. Whereas, doing my own thing with my own shop, if something is urgent, I'll handle it. But if it's not, I don't have to. And content creation is very much like you pick it up when you pick it up, and you can leave it there for a month and come back to it. Nothing is, again, urging and pushing me to do it. So having a lot more control is very, very helpful for mental health in general. That said, I do think Biglaw destroyed my abilities to set boundaries for myself. I basically became a workaholic even right after I quit, and I didn't even have a full-time, W-2 job. And that's been terrible for my mental health personally. So I've been working on rebuilding that sense of, okay, this time is for work, this time is not for work. And it has not been easy. Very hard to break out of that addictive behavior. And that's something that Biglaw definitely ingrained in me, for better or for worse. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. And just want to add a quick follow-up question. So when you were in law school or working as a Biglaw corporate associate, how did you build your support network? Who do you talk to when you have these kind of issues? Whether it's trauma bonding or speak with your friends or family members. How did you manage this process of maintaining a good mental health throughout these challenging times?
I can start. I think what Jen said about trauma bonding is key. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your mentors, talk to people in your personal network. Don't just suffer in silence. That doesn't serve anybody, right? And you'll be pleasantly surprised when people also have similar lived experiences to you because they're going through similar stuff. But the other thing I'd say is you have to be a maverick, especially in the legal profession. You can't go in there and expect people to be good role models for mental health, for work-life balance, for prioritizing family and their social circles above, their jobs. Don't be afraid to say, no, I don't want to do it. I have too much work on my plate, period. And don't be afraid to say, I'm taking a 2-week vacation as a first-year associate, and I will get everything done beforehand. I'll get everything done after, but I'm going to take this 2-week vacation. If you fall into the rat race and the bubble of the mentality that Biglaw and to some degree law school creates, then you can very, very quickly end up spiraling into just being a workaholic all the time. And that, of course, is just not great for mental health or for well-being.
Yeah, I think in law school, I made it a point to hang out with non-HLS person once a week or every other week. I think that's really important to give you perspective. And definitely, it's really hard when you're in law school and in WCC and you see people in the library at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. It's very hard to, not be part of that. But I would encourage you as much as you can to just, not don't get tunnel vision. It's not EIP ranking, whatever. It doesn't matter if you get a P or H or whatever that was. No one cares. Just know, I think your mental health is more important. And I remember, I think there was a social worker or a therapist at the law school health clinic or something. So I think definitely reaching out to those resources as well helped me. And then when I was navigating jobs, I actually hired a career coach. So that was really helpful. She gave me a lot of courage and she was my cheerleader. So that was definitely helpful to have someone who's a non-HLS person having my back.
Yeah, I very much agree. This initiative to to seeking external resources, institutional resources, and setting our own boundary, trying to kind of preserve the autonomy and control over how you weight these different priorities. Yeah, so I know that some of us might have to run about 15 to 20 minutes. So I want to open the floor for Q&A. So feel free to raise your hand. And I'll get started by kind of a more specific question directed to ask my students who are more interested in tax transactions or legal tax. So I guess the question is how common or how easy or challenging it is for a say tech law attorney to transition to these in-house roles, whether it's kind of legal counsel roles in big tech or more niche legal tech positions. How common is that?
So it is rare, but we exist. I think in-house legal positions, I think once you're at a law firm, when you're third year or fifth year, I think that's when people start transitioning to in-house. So that's definitely very doable. But let's say that you want to do a non-legal job, that's a little tougher, but I know, I did it, you can do it too. It's not impossible. I have friends who are, he had his own firm. He was he was a prosecutor, and he worked at a Biglaw for 10 years, and now he's a software engineer. It's definitely doable. It takes a lot of discipline and courage, obviously, to leave behind what you're used to. But with a lot of, work and dedication, you can make it happen. And important thing is that you have to network for these things. Just don't be afraid to send a DM on LinkedIn to randos. You'll be surprised how receptive people are. So just, use everything in your power to, meet people, get referrals, and it's definitely doable.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Any more questions?
Hi, thank you guys for coming. You talked a lot about differences in, work-life balance and culture between your legal roles and your current ones. How would you characterize the different personalities you're working with compared to lawyers? Much more chill people, or actually quite similar? Thanks.
I can start. A lot of content creators are Gen Z. I am a millennial, so that's been a learning process. But they tend to be a little more, in general, creators tend to be more unsophisticated, right? A lot of them need a lot of hand-holding when it comes to basic legal questions, and a lot of folks also just don't know what their rights are. They get abused by an employer and they're afraid to even talk about their experiences with close family and friends. So I would say they're definitely more chill, and they require a lot of patience in guiding them through the law, which can be very intimidating for most folks. Every now and then we do have lawyers, of course, because I am an attorney for creators and I deal with opposing counsel, and so to that end it's the similar lawyer personalities. But for the most part, creators are just all walks of life and unsophisticated on the legal side.
So I work with a lot of other product managers who are, more business focused people, so they're more social. But I also work with a lot of software engineers who are, quiet, dorky, nerdy. Hopefully no one is a nice software engineer there, but they're less social. But a lot of my clients are attorneys. And most of them are super nice. I really like them. But there are a couple who can be really mean because, they think I'm some young tech worker and I'm a software vendor. So they're oh, she's a nobody. And they also ask for so many ridiculous things. And they can be rude, but those are exceptions.
Yeah, I can see that, being in a current role allows you to, have interactions with a very diverse group of people. compared to working at a law firm where most of the people that you deal with are your clients or your fellow attorneys or paralegals, which tend to be more monotonous. So I'm sure this is a very fun, exciting experience. Yes.
Hi, thanks for speaking with us today. I was curious your opinion. I know that I worked in finance before law school, and I've talked to people who said that like maybe it's not worth it to even go into big law after law school at all. So this is not like finance specific, but do you have any suggestions on navigating that? Like, is it worth it to even go into law for a bit, to kind of inform your experience, or just do something else entirely?
It really depends on what you want to do long term, but I can tell you, I don't think it hurts. I mean, what is 1 to 2 years in a span of a 50-year career? Especially when the 1 to 2 years gives you money to pay off loans, skills, right? Trains you to be an attorney to some degree. Obviously, not the most complex things, but it does train you and gives you some good personal branding. Jen can probably speak to doing things directly from law school outside of it. I would just advocate for the fact that it has a lot of value, but it's not the whole world, obviously. So if you have something else that you're really passionate about or interested in, and you know that the big law track and where it leads you is just not interesting, well, then there's no reason to go. And maybe it is worth your time to do something else, consulting or maybe even finance, returning to that world, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm sure Jen has a good perspective on this.
Yeah, so that was, when I told people that I was not gonna do big law, people were like, oh, you don't want to do it for like just 1 or 2 years to, make some quick money. And to me, I was like, no, what's the point? I'm gonna leave. If I'm counting down the days till I leave at the firm, 1 year of, it was like 190K at the time, like that wasn't like worth it to me. And also I find that if you have that, attorney title in your resume, like non-legal employers will like ask more questions about it. And for me, it was hard to convince people that, oh, I'm actually serious about transitioning to tech because they saw law school and like pass the bar exam. So yeah, for me, I don't think, if you already know you're going to quit in a year, I don't think it's worth it personally.
Thank you both for joining us. One question I had was, in hindsight, are there certain things that you wish you did differently when you were in law school? Let's say by picking up certain skills, non-law related, or just doing things differently that would have gotten you faster to where you are currently?
I think I definitely took courses outside law school, and that was helpful to me. I forget it's actually a cross-listed class, but I took like a financial modeling class, and that actually is helping me in my job now. So I'm glad I did it. And yeah, but I don't think I would have done anything differently. There was one point where I considered, maybe if I'd done a JD MBA, it would have been helpful. And I think initially for my job search, it would have been helpful. But just knowing that now that I'm like here in this role, I don't think like 1 or 2 extra years of school would have done much to me.
For me, it's non-law school related, but just be less stubborn about mental health earlier, and be more open to what the word means and how it could be affecting me and how stress could be impacting me and things of that nature. Would have made my career in Biglaw a lot more tolerable, would have helped me prepare for the pandemic, which was miserable, and who knows where I would have ended up. Probably in a similar position now, but like you said, maybe a bit faster and certainly with less suffering on the way.
Great. Are there more questions? Well, I think that's probably that's all the questions that we have for today. So I just want to say thank you, Jen, thank you, Julie, again for taking your time and offering to be a resource to all of us. And I'm sure they will be able to reach out to you like on LinkedIn or email or Amicus, right? Yeah,
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
can
please.
definitely DM me on LinkedIn. I'll reply.
Yeah, hit me up on Instagram. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.